What's up guys, it's Nofsky, and today I'm going to show you my top 10 plugins that I cannot live without. Before we get into the video though, definitely stay tuned to the end because I have a free gift for you guys and you do not want to miss out. Let's jump in. Alright guys, so number one on the list is actually a free plugin that I use in pretty much all of my songs or projects or whatever you want to call them. And that plugin is Endless Smile. Now, in a nutshell, what Endless Smile does is there's an intensity knob, so it's really user-friendly, just one knob, and then you have a few different settings right here. And I typically keep it on the soft or the first 2 or 3 settings. But what it essentially does is it kind of washes out. It's kind of like a reverb slash delay slash low cut combined in one plugin in multiple different variations as you go throughout the presets. So I'm going to go ahead and put it on this first setting, and I have this bass line here, and this is what it sounds like. And so I'm actually using this bass as a build-up bass to then go into the drop. I'm using a different bass here, but it's the same MIDI pattern. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start this washed out, and then we're going to kind of bring it into its true sound. And so how I'm going to do that, I have Endless Smile here. I'm going to go ahead and hit A on my keyboard to bring up the automation. I'm going to click the intensity knob, and then I'm going to form an automation curve kind of like this. Now let's go ahead and give this a listen. Let's go ahead and listen to this in context. To the sound of the bass. So as you can see, it's just an incredible tool to wash out kind of anything or start it washed out or however you want to use it. I typically use it on basses for that like pre-drop kind of teasing them with the lead bass line or the lead synth. You can use it on build-up drums. You can use it on just pretty much anything. Try it out as you're stacking your risers and you have your builds and just try to kind of wash things out. It can be a super powerful plugin. Plugin number 2 is going to be the Pro Q. So the Pro Q, it's just an EQ, right? But it is my favorite EQ for a lot of reasons. One, just the visual aspect of the EQ. It's really big. You can kind of see everything going on when you're making those small cuts. You don't have to get out your telescope just to see what's going on. There's also many different things that you can do with it. In this instance, I'm using it for this bass line. So let's go ahead and listen to the bass really quick without it. And with. So I know you're like, wow, okay, Josh, you just showed us that you cut some frequencies and used an EQ. But there is just so many more things you can do. I can go ahead and I can make dynamic EQ cuts. I can also go ahead and do the stereo placement. So say I wanted to cut all the side frequencies starting at 430 and just make the sound more mono. This is what that sounds like. So probably one of my favorite features of the Pro Q is the analyzer right here. One, I can go ahead and freeze the frequencies. So that way I don't have to guess. It'll just keep everything up right here and I can just get a really good look at it. I can go ahead and look at other tracks that have the Pro Q on it and kind of see where their frequencies are, just to kind of compare if I have any conflicting frequencies on this track versus theirs. And guys, I don't want to keep going into all the amazing things about it, but definitely check it out. It is my favorite EQ. Let's move on. All right, guys, for plugin number 3, we have the Pro C. Same family, FabFilter, you're amazing. So the Pro 3 can be used, it's a compressor, and it's used for a lot of things, but my favorite thing that I use it for is for the side chaining. Now, I went ahead and pulled up the Ableton stock compressor to compare the two as far as side chaining goes, so you can really hear the difference. So first, I'm going to go ahead and use this guy to sidechain our bass, and let's give this a listen. So as you can hear, there's a little popping. It doesn't, like a little click pop, and it doesn't do as good of a job. Let's go ahead and listen to the Pro C sidechain. So it's just super clean. The attack and release really work very well. There's no clicking or popping, and it is just leagues ahead of any Ableton stock plugin for sidechaining purposes. Now, I use the Pro C for many other things, but that's probably the biggest thing that I love the Pro C and why it made it into my top 10. I do have other compressors here, so let's go ahead and move along. So staying in the compressor family, number 4 is going to be the CLA 76 by Waves. So you might be asking, Josh, why do you have another compressor when you already have a compressor? Why do you need 2 compressors? Well, I don't need 2. I have a lot, like probably 20 to 30 different compressors in my computer, but the reason why I like to use a different compressor is I feel with each compressor, it kind of has its own unique signature, right? It has its own tonality. When I put on one compressor versus the other compressor, it leaves the sound sounding just a little bit different. Now, I love the tonality that the CLA has on sounds, specifically basses and vocals. I'm going to give you a demonstration for a bass. So just a quick layout of the CLA. You have a blacky version and you have a bluey version. Now, the difference between the two, at least from what my ears tell me, is the bluey is more kind of warm, organic, analog-ish sounding. The blacky is more synthetic. It leaves that classic thin compressor vibe on there, if that makes any sense. So a few ways I go about using this guy is they have loads of presets, and then they have a whole blacky section and a bluey section. I typically start with the start me up setting, and depending on what I'm using it for, I'll either choose the bluey or the blacky. You have your input knob kind of dictating the threshold, your output, your attack, your release, and your ratio. So I don't want to make this a video about compressors, so I'm not going to go in the ins and outs of that, but I'm just going to go ahead and showcase this guy in action. So first, let's go ahead and play with it off. And this is with it on. So as you can hear, the sound is just a lot more consistent overall, but you don't really hear a actual compressor vibe to it, if that makes sense. The CLA is a great way to just kind of polish up sounds without all the negative sounds that you get from using a typical compressor. So moving right along to number 5, let's get into the saturation and distortion and what I always reach for when I tackle those things. So I have this lead here. Also guys, by the way, if you like any of these sounds, we have a whole serum pack called House of Serum with professional quality serum presets ready to drag and drop to make your music from 0 to 100. So definitely go check those out. There's a link down in the description. So distortion and saturation. Number 5 on the list is Decapitator Boom by Sound Toys. There's only 2 distortion and saturations that I typically reach for when beefing up a sound, and this is one of them. Decapitator is amazing. I would consider it more on the distortion side as opposed to saturation. And the thing that's just so incredible is just the sound that it produces. Right now I'm using it in a more subtle way, but don't let that fool you. This baby's got some power under the hood. So let's go ahead and give this a listen. This is without. Now we're going to apply Decapitator. Now, the cool thing about this is, as you can hear, we have a dark and bright knob right here in the middle, which actually changed the whole tone of the sound. If you noticed when you heard without Decapitator, it's a little more brighter, and then once Decapitator was applied, the sound almost got darker, and some of those highs were a little dampened. And that's with this knob right here. I'm going to go ahead and crank this knob over to the bright side, and let's give it a listen. Another cool thing is it has all these styles here at the bottom, so I'm just going to go ahead and play it, and let's click through some of these and see how drastically the sound changes. So as you can hear, it's just a lot of different flavors. They got a lot of different presets going on for all different instruments. They have the drive knob here, they have the mix knob here, low cut, high cut, thump, steep. They have just so many options here. And then one of my personal favorites, they have the punish button. So I'm just gonna give you a quick demo. It's pretty extreme, but let's do it. So like I said, a lot of power under the hood. I hope I didn't bust your eardrums, but let's keep moving. So number 6 is going to be Saturn. Now, Saturn I typically use for saturation, and if you're not sure of the difference between distortion and saturation, they're pretty much the same thing. The way I like to describe it is saturation adds additional harmonic frequencies, giving the sound a more warm, fuller sound, and then distortion is saturation on steroids. So Saturn is what I typically reach for a saturation plugin. Now, the amazing thing about Saturn is you can actually create bands here, and you can kind of dictate where you want the saturation to be applied. So if I wanted some saturation between 75 hertz and 630 hertz, I can go ahead and create this little pocket here, and I can only affect that frequency range right here. Now I can change the tone here. I can go ahead and dictate what kind of saturation I want to apply, and then I can have a wet and dry knob right here. So there's a lot of amazing things you can do with this. They have a lot of amazing presets as well. I'm just going to demonstrate one of my favorites. It is the Saturate and Color O. So let's go ahead and listen to the sound without. Now let's apply some Saturn. As you can see, it just warms up the sound. It sounds more fuller. You can hear the harmonic frequencies kind of enter in there, and it just beefs it up overall. One of my favorite saturation plugins. Let's move along. So for plugin number 7, it's actually a series of plugins, not just one. I do want to touch on one, but I use all the other ones as well, and that's going to be the R series from Waves. This is the R compressor, but they have the R bass, the R Vox, and they're all just incredible, incredible plugins. I do want to touch on the compressor though. So let's pull the threshold up. I'm going to apply it to some drums. So let's go ahead and hear this drum groove without this on. So just your standard house drum groove. Now I want you to hear when I drag this threshold down how much more alive and consistent these drums become. So when I first started producing, a lot of times my drums just kind of felt like they were lacking and they just didn't punch through the mix very well. They sounded almost a little too neat per se. And let me tell you, when I started using R comp on my drums, they just all of a sudden became crunchy, punched through the mix, consistent, and just overall solid. And so you can use R comp for many, many things, but I typically use it for drums, and it is the only compressor I typically use for drums, and it is just incredible. They also have a lot of amazing presets as well. So kind of in the same family of compression, I do want to touch on number 8, and that is going to be FabFilter Pro L. Now, the L stands for limiter, and that is what it is, and it is my favorite. I haven't yet come across another limiter that I prefer. I'm going to crank this down so I don't destroy your ears, but honestly, for this one, it's the presets. The presets are just incredible. They have so many different ones, and they're all just incredible and great. And yeah, I know this is a limiter, and I use it on my master chain for any song that I'm mastering, but I also go ahead and use this on maybe a vocal or a lead line, or you can use it on just about anything. But this is definitely one of my favorite limiters ever. One of the really cool things about this limiter is not only do they have the presets, but then you can further adjust the style right here. So you can kind of customize your own settings. What I'll do is I'll find a preset that I enjoy, and then I'll go ahead and tweak it from there. I'll dial in the gain knob until I'm seeing about -5 dB gain reduction, and then I'll call it. You can also set the output here as well. So regardless to how much you crank this knob, your master will never show anything more than what you set right here. So again, don't want to get into how to limit songs in this video. If you guys are interested in anything I've touched on and you want it in more detail, definitely let me know down below. So guys, I'm going to be using this lead line to showcase plugin number 9, and this is what it sounds like. And for plugin number 9, I went ahead and chose Valhalla. Now, Valhalla is a reverb plugin, and the reason this made the top 10 is I have never found another reverb plugin like this one. The reverb, it just sounds like it's enmeshed with the sound, right? A lot of other reverbs I use, they sound like synthetic and kind of attached from the sound. Like as you apply it, it just sounds like the sound is all the way over here, but the reverb is in the other room, and it's just kind of you're trying to force something to happen. With Valhalla, that is not the case. It just sounds like it's one with the sound. So I'm going to go ahead and showcase this for you guys. I do have it on a plate setting, and so it's going to be a little bit of a shorter reverb, and I have it assigned to the ascend, so that's going to be this knob right here. So let's play this sound, and I'm going to go ahead and start to apply this reverb so you can see exactly what it does. As you can see what I'm talking about, it is just incredible. It sounds so natural, so organic compared to other reverbs I made. So that is Valhalla. It's actually one of the cheapest plugins on this list, and you can get it for, I think, 50 bucks. So definitely go check that out. So for plugin number 10, it's kind of a weird one. The name of the plugin is Oxford Inflator by Sonics. And if I were to try to explain this plugin to someone, it would be like going through an intense math equation. It's not one thing. It's just kind of a plugin that just makes your sound better. And you'll see what I'm talking about. I have yet to find another plugin that could ever replace this. It kind of has a high price tag, but if you guys know of something or a sequence of plugins that does the same as this guy right here, definitely let me know down below because I would love to know. So typically what I use this for is I'll have it on my master chain. And the best way I can describe this plugin is it just makes your sound bigger and better without giving you a gain boost at all. So your sound sounds louder, it sounds more full, it just sounds overall better, and you'll see what I'm talking about in here in a second. But yeah, I'll use it on my master bus, or if I feel like a lead is really lacking and I've tried to beef it up with distortion or saturation or something, I'll go ahead and turn to this, the holy grail of making sounds better. So I'm gonna go ahead and apply this guy to this lead, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So as you can see, once this knob started going up, so did the sound. It just started sounding a little bigger, maybe a little wider, maybe a little fuller, and like I said, it's tough for me to explain, but I know this plugin works, and I use it in every single project, and it is incredible. So guys, I know I said only 10, but I went ahead and broke the rules, and I do have a number 11 that I do want to mention. So number 11 is Vocal Sauce 3. And the reason I chose that to be in the top 11 plugins I couldn't live without is every time I open a project, I'm working, I record some vocals, I can just simply drag and drop these vocal presets and immediately get in the ballpark of what my vocals could sound like. It's like bringing out a sample platter. I'm able to sample all these different versions and variations of styles that my vocals could sound like in the song that I'm working on, which helps you start and stay in the creative flow and worry less about tweaking and turning knobs and able to skim through a bunch of different quality presets in seconds. Which brings me to our free gift. Now, the free gift is a template, the one you see me using here, and we have a whole video explaining the template, but in a nutshell, what it does is it kind of has everything gain staged for you. It has some EQs set up, a side chain, and everything, so when you open up the project, you'll be able to focus more on creating. Everything has a place. If there's a riser bus, there's an atmosphere bus, a synth bus, everything just kind of has a place so your project can stay organized and you can focus more on creating instead of turning knobs and and tweaking things. So if that sounds interesting to you guys, then definitely go check that out. There's a description down below where you can get that free today. Alright guys, that pretty much wraps up the video. I hope something inspired you and you got value from this video. Maybe a plugin that could transform your workflow or your productions. If you have any comments or questions about anything that I covered in the video, definitely put those down below. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe. You guys have a blessed day. Peace.